Today I'm looking at the Supertrend Indicator and the strategies that you can use with that Supertrend Indicator. I'm going to start with the basic strategy and then I'm going to add a few things to it to try to improve the strategy. And I'll tell you now, this isn't going to end with a magic 1,000,000% winning strategy, but it will show how you can improve a strategy and the kind of things you want to apply to it. So this is really a workshop type video. So on screen I have the Supertrend Indicator. It's quite a good indicator. I like it. It is also very simple. So what we have here is the Supertrend line. There's a lower line and an upper line. And when the lower line forms, it forms at a point that is a number of ATR away from the midpoint of the high and low of this candle. And then it tracks. At each point, it calculates the high and low of the candle and the midpoint of those two, and then a multiple of the ATR. And in this case, we're looking at the lower line. If that value, the multiple of ATR from that midpoint, is higher than the current value of the Supertrend line, then the line will move up. If the calculated value is lower, then the Supertrend line will remain where it was. So it works a little bit like a trailing stop. It will always follow the candles until it reaches a point where it switches to a downtrend. It does switch to a downtrend when here there's actually a candle that has closed below the lower line. So these candles that went below the lower line and closed above don't break the trend. But this candle, where it closes below the lower line, causes the line to switch, and then we get an upper line forming, and it follows the same rules. It's the midpoint plus a multiple of ATR. So if I look at the settings for that Supertrend indicator, this is set to use an ATR period of 20 and a multiple of 2. So this line is tracking the midpoint of each candle minus 2 times the 20 period ATR. And that's where this line begins. And at this point here, or at the end of that candle, the midpoint would have still been around the same place. 2 times the ATR comes to here. And so this line just continually tracks up until it's broken. Very simple function. And it's visually appealing. You can quite easily see that we have a trend here that begins there and goes to here. But what you must remember, this trend doesn't begin until that candle closes. So the entry point on that uptrend is here, and the trend doesn't finish until a candle closes below. So the exit point is here. So it's not quite as good as calculating from, if I just try to get the crosshairs onto the very beginning of that line and go to the end, that shows 756 points. If I go from the actual entry point, which would be, it's actually the opening of the next candle, from there to the point where we know that the trend is broken, which is again the opening of the next candle, that's only 356 points. So you can see that the lagging nature of identifying a change in the trend causes you to lose quite a bit of that trend. Now I'm going to begin with the basic Supertrend strategy, which simply says enter at the beginning of a trend and exit at the close, and then enter in the opposite direction. And as we can see here, I've got a few actual trends that have just closed. So this trend, the most recent one, would have opened here and closed here for 903 points. So that's not bad. This trend, which we just calculated, would have begun there and ended here for 356 points. 356 points. The trend before that would have entered here and exited here for 245 points. So this is a very good indicator and strategy in a trending market. But if I scroll this chart backwards a little, you can find points like this where a lower line formed indicating an uptrend but went nowhere. So this line would have formed at that point. We would have entered there for an uptrend and exited here at a much lower price and lost 485 points there. If I take the trend immediately before that, it's a downtrend. We would have entered there and exited at this point, which is a loss of 223 points. So it's not all good news with this particular indicator. It works well on a trend and not well in a ranging market. So you really have to identify whether the market is trending or ranging. But let's go straight to some actual analysis. I've written an expert advisor that will simply follow the basic rules to begin with, and then we'll start adding things in to make that better. I have the strategy tester open. I've loaded the Supertrend Basic Expert. I'm running on the Euro USD 1 hour time frame for the year beginning of 2022 up till the beginning of 23. If I go to the inputs, I'm using a fixed lot size of 0.1. I use a fixed lot size in these kind of demonstrations because it just keeps all the trades the same and it's much easier to explain and demonstrate. I've got the Supertrend period and multiplier here. The period is 20 ATR or 20 period ATR, and the multiplier 2 times the ATR. And that's exactly the same as I have the Supertrend showing on the chart. The price mode, high, low, I didn't mention this earlier, but this particular Supertrend indicator lets me have a choice between 2 pricing modes, and that's for determining that midpoint. The default and the standard Supertrend is the high and low, the midpoint of the high and low. This indicator also allows me to choose between that or the midpoint of the open and close. And the main point where that would be different would be a candle such as, let's see if I can find one here. A candle like this. Now, it probably wouldn't have actually affected that value, but it might have, where the open and close are quite different to the high and low. So rather than calculate a midpoint, which would be somewhere down here, it would actually calculate a midpoint in the middle of the candle there. It's mainly for use where you might have a large spike. So say around a news event, you might get a very large spike that then comes back again. And by using the high-low, you can get a skew towards the high or the low, where the open-close tends to be more moderated. For this example and for testing, it's probably not going to make much difference, so I'm going to leave that at high-low. And 3 other things here that I will get to in a minute. I've added them into the expert so that I can adjust some settings if I want to, but I'm leaving those all turned off at the moment, so I'm running the very basic expert advisor, which simply enters on an up or downtrend start and exits on the end of the trend. So I've run this through and you can see the chart or the graph of the results, and some points when we get into a trending market it's a nice steep climb, but then when it goes into a ranging market there's a steady decline, and the ranging markets tend to run for longer than the trending markets. So although the ranging market isn't as steep on the chart, it does run for longer, and so ultimately this is a losing proposition. We're down here somewhere, and that's generally what I would expect from this. Ranging markets exist for a longer period than a trending market, and because of the nature of that simple algorithm where this is simply entering at the beginning of a trend and exiting at the end, and especially given that you lose that certain amount because we have to wait for the candle to close before we know that the trend is finished, then ultimately this is a losing proposition. If I look at the backtest result here, that's a loss of 1,501. Now to go to the inputs, and let's start playing with some of these values. I looked at the turtle trading algorithms. Now the turtle traders, if you haven't read about them, were given a specific set of rules to follow on the basis that anyone can trade and be profitable if they just follow the rules. It's worth reading that. I'm not sure that their algorithm is still applicable today and not in all markets. But one of the rules they had was to exit, and they used a Dontchian channel. I'm using Supertrend here today. They would exit on the opposite signal only if the trade is in profit, which means they would basically carry their losses. They were able to do that because they had quite a large fund behind them, and they were able to carry the losses for a long time until they eventually came back into profit. But in following that kind of tradition, I've added this flag, this no loss. And it's false at the moment. If I turn that on, then this will only close trades on the end of a trend if those trades are in profit. And now I also have this flag, allow multiple trades. So if I'm going to keep a trade open, then the next time a trend opens up, I would not open a new trade. So I'm going to turn both of these on at the same time. So this means that every time a trend starts, I'll open a trade, even if I have other trades already open. And I'll only close trades at the end of a trend if the trade is in profit. Now this does mean that I'm going to get some drawdown. So if I can actually flick back to the graph. You can see here that the equity and the balance curves very closely follow because I don't have big drawdowns. But now that I've changed these settings to hold trades open, I'm expecting to see a drawdown, and then we'll see what the result of that is. So we're beginning initially with 1,501 loss. So you can see here that we actually had a very large drawdown and eventually crashed out down here for a major loss. And this is because we've had some false entry signals, then the price is reversed, and we've held those signals because we are not closing trades at a loss, and they've just been held until the end here. If I go to the backtest, I don't know this is even a sensible result, minus 9,476. So we lost basically the entire account. And that's because we were holding losing trades for too long. Now the next thing I'm looking at here is this loss applied at average. So with this flag set, each time the trend reverses, I would only close the trades that are in profit. If I turn on the loss at average, the rule I'm applying here is that I will close all the trades that are in profit, and then I will use that profit to add on to any currently losing trades to see if I can close them with a total profit of 0 or greater. So this will actually begin to close other losing trades. It does mean my profits are going to be reduced, but it will close some of those losing trades, and it will have an impact on the drawdown that I have. So I'll set that to true, and now the expert will actually close additional trades. So now I'll run this and see what difference that makes to the drawdown. And so that hasn't made much difference at all. Now I'm going to switch to a modified version of the expert again, but this time I want to add in some stop loss. So I don't necessarily want to close the trade as soon as the trend reverses, but if it does reverse and then continues in the opposite direction, I want to have a stop loss in place. I've just closed up the strategy tester for a moment while I show what I'm talking about. I've added a Dontchian channel. It's also 20 periods, so my Supertrend is running with a 20 period ATR, and I have a 20 period Dontchian channel. Dontchian simply calculates the highest high and the lowest low for the previous, in this case, 20 periods, and that line will stay there until that's no longer the lowest low. So at this point I have a low. By the time I go 20 bars to the right, that is no longer the lowest low, and then this becomes the lowest low, and so that line moves up. And then when I start to get some, again, lower prices, the line will move down. So the Dontchian channel is similar in that it tracks an upward move until something actually breaks through the bottom line. And the same with the top line. It will track down until something breaks that top line. So I'm going to use that as a stop loss. I'm going to say that, and here I hope you can see this, I'll try to zoom in. At this point I said initially, here was the opening of the trend, and we would have entered at that point for an uptrend. And here was the exit from that uptrend, which is a loss of 232 points. And using the standard expert, that would have happened. We would have simply lost that. I changed then to follow the turtle type trading rules, which said only close the trades in profit. And that meant that this particular loss then continued from here all the way down here for a loss of close to 1,000 points. So what I'm doing here with the Dontchian channel is adding a stop loss, and that will say that this particular trade would exit at that point. I still would have made a loss going from here down to where it broke the Dontchian channel, but that loss was only 133 points, and that will prevent these kind of runaway trades. So let's open the strategy tester again. I've loaded up for the Supertrend Dontchian in this case, still Euro USD, 1 hour, 1 year. I have the no loss set to true, so this will not close as soon as it changes the trend. It will try to hold that trade in case the trend flips back again. It will allow multiple trades. The stop loss type, I'm going to set that to the Dontchian Channel. And you can see some other settings which we'll get to in a moment. And the Dontchian period here, 20, that's the length of the Dontchian Channel. So let's start the test on that. So the result now, a loss of 1,309. So that's the best result that we've had so far, but not by much. So the stop loss has prevented the runaway losses, but it also means that at times I'm closing trades out that may have turned around to become a profit. That's just one of the things you get with a stop loss. You would have seen in the inputs here, I have another stop loss type, which is the Supertrend. And in that case, go back to the chart, what I'll be doing is treating the Supertrend line itself as the stop loss line, and I'll be cutting out as soon as, in this case, the price crossed that line. So that can have some advantages. So if I look at this losing trade, then obviously that means we would have still entered here, but closed out at the point where the Supertrend was crossed for only 190, for only a 129 point loss. It means that in this case, where I actually had a winning trade, I would have entered there, and under the standard rules, I would exit at the top of this bar when the trend changed for 523 points. Now it's only a small bar, but if I exited on that Supertrend stop loss, that would have been 559 points. But it also means, let me just scroll along here and find the point we were talking about initially. It also means that for this trend, which we saw was quite profitable to begin with, I would have entered here with a stop loss there, because these actually broke the line but didn't change the trend. So I change that now to the Supertrend stop loss. And the backtest results minus 1,852. So apart from the cases where we crashed the account, this is not a good result. So by applying a different type of stop loss, I've saved some on the losing trades, but I've lost some on the winning trades. Now, there are variations you can apply to this, and I really haven't got the time in one video to show all the possible variations, but you might choose to say that you'll only apply the stop loss if the trend has reversed. I'm simply applying it from the beginning. Let's go to the other options here. I've got this Dontchian take profit, just to see what that will do. Now in that case, and back to the chart, I would be saying that I'm going to take profit when I break through that Dontchian, which in the case of those small reversals, it means that I would enter on a short trend like this one. I would enter at this point where the trend has formed, and I would exit then as soon as I break through that Dontchian for 187 points. Where if I hold that until the end, this is actually a losing trade because the trend reversed, and by the time it reversed, the price had already gone above. So the take profit is a way of grabbing profits early, but it does mean that in cases where I have a long running trend, like here, if I enter at that point and exit where the trend finishes, that's 362 points. But if I exit as soon as I break through the Dontchian, that's only 83 points. Just like the stop loss, it means that I will at sometimes grab the profit when it's better than at the close of the trend, and at other times I'm grabbing it too early. I'll just change that back to a Dontchian stop loss at the same time. On the backtest results now, this is the best result we've had, $535 loss still. So I've tried various techniques to make sure that I don't hold trades too long, that I don't get out of trades too early, that I grab profits when I can. But as I mentioned at the beginning, This particular indicator is a trending indicator. And if I follow a strategy that just looks at the trending indicator, then when I'm in a ranging market, I quite often get flipped from side to side and lose out on that. What I'm going to do now is add another indicator that will tell me if I am in a ranging or a trending market. And for that, I'm going to use the ADX indicator. So now I've again closed up the strategy tester. I'm just on the chart and I've added the ADX indicator here. This is the ADX Wilder indicator with a 14 period. And the theory here is that the actual ADX line, it has a minus line and a plus line, but I'm looking at the ADX line, which is the overall trend. If that is above a certain level, then I'm in a trending market, and below a certain level, then I'm going to assume that I'm in a ranging market. Now I'm going to set that level at 25, but there is an input for it. So in the strategy tester now, I've loaded the Supertrend ADX version. I have the no loss set to true. Allow multiple trades set to true. I'm not using a stop loss right now. I've added the ADX with a period of 14, that's the default, and the trending level to 25. So I'll only be trading entries if the ADX is above 25, but I will exit as soon as the trend finishes. So what this will do is cut down on the number of trades that I make, and hopefully it will make those trades better quality. And now I'm back to a situation, because I haven't got any close on those trades, where I've got running losses that eventually blow the account. Now I'm just going to try two more things with the Supertrend ADX version. So I've still got no loss set to true, so I won't be closing trades that are in a loss. But I am setting the stop loss type now to a Dontchian, so this will have a stop loss at that Dontchian channel. And I've also modified this to have this flag here. I said earlier that the stop loss would be applied even if we were in the current trend. I've now added a flag to say only apply the stop loss if we're outside the trend. So the default and the current setting is true, which means that it will close trades as soon as I hit that stop loss point. But I'm going to set that to false. And now it will only close trades at that stop loss point if we're not in that current trend. So it'll only close buy trades if we're in the sell trend. Let's run that. And now it looks like for the first time, yes, we have a test that has resulted in a profit. Only $132 out of 10,000. Now I did warn you at the beginning, this hasn't been an exercise in showing you how to make large profits out of this. It's been an exercise in showing you the kind of things that you would do to a strategy to make it more and more profitable. And there's obviously a lot more that can be done. That ADX could be replaced by a different indicator. The settings could be changed. Instead of using the ADX, for example, you might want to compare the Supertrend to the Supertrend on a higher time frame chart to get a trend direction. But this does give you an idea of the kind of things that I would step through, and I wouldn't stop here. There are obviously so many combinations of these things. There is one more thing that I've built into this Supertrend ADX, just for a little bit of testing to see how it will work. Let me go to the inputs here. Use incremental lot sizes. What this will do, if I'm trading in the buy direction, for example, it will detect any existing sell trades and increase the size of my buy trade to match the total size of the existing sell trades. And it will do the same on the opposite side. So each time it takes a new trade, the size of that trade will match the number of trades on the opposite side that are still open. So to do that, I'm going to turn off the stop loss type. None. Allow multiple trades true. No loss is true. I have no stop loss and no take profit, and I'm going to turn on the incremental lot sizes. So because I don't have a stop loss anymore, I'm expecting a drawdown, but the purpose of this incremental lot sizes will be to increase the profits on the opposite side, and with luck that will more than offset the drawdown. And for this, I'm also going to reset this loss applied at average. if I don't have a stop loss, I at least want some way of getting out of the losing trades. So I'm not closing losing trades, except that if I am closing some that are winners, then I'll average those out with any losing trades. I'm going to allow multiple trades to happen. I have no stop loss. I am not using a take profit, but I am growing the lot sizes each time I take a trade, and there are already open trades on the other side. Alright, so as expected, I have a growing drawdown here, but the close point there looks like I've made a profit. And I've made $5,317. On a $10,000 account, that's a 53% profit in a year. It's not as high as you might get from some of the more aggressive type experts, but this is just something we've been playing around with to try to make some profit, and now it shows a 53% increase. And I imagine that if I wanted to take this a little further, I could find ways of setting a stop loss that gives me a better result without cutting out my potential profits too early. So just a bit of a walkthrough there on possible options for modifying a strategy. So I hope you'll find this useful as you continue trading. If you have, then please click the like button and click subscribe to see more of our videos. Until next time, thank you for watching.